You're watching West Hartford. You're watching West Hartford.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
Clap your wings and touch your toes. 3.141592.
For the community, for the community, for the community, by the community. You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
Sleep nor drink nor money have we none. Still our blood.
For the community, by the community.
For the community, by the community.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television. For the community, by the community.
This is like the University of Hartford's dream kind of project. Jews and Christians and Muslims working together to uncover the ancient history of Judaism, the ancient history of Christianity, and the ancient history of Islam.
Hello and welcome to Shalom Hartford, the program that is about all things Jewish. And today we're going to interview Dr. Richard Freund, doctor, rabbi, archaeologist, director of the Maurice Greenberg Center for Judaic Studies, or should I say the Indiana Jones of Connecticut. I'm Pat Kazikoff. Stay with me. Welcome, Dr. Freund.
Thank you for the invitation.
Why rabbi? Why archaeologist?
Well, what I do for a living is I'm a professor of Judaic Studies, Jewish history, and I'm the endowed professor, the Maurice Greenberg professor at the University of Hartford in history. Mm-hmm. I wear many hats even at the university. So I'm department chair. We actually have a department of Judaic Studies, but my passion, my area of research has been archaeology for the past 30 years.
What came first, the rabbi or the archaeologist?
You know, it's a funny way that you get to these things. But one of the first jobs that I had right out of the university when I finished my PhD, I was asked to take over a seminario, a seminary in Buenos Aires. And they said, you know, you're going to have to be rabbi doctor. So I accepted ordination from the same institution, the Jewish Theological Seminary and the conservative movement of Judaism, back in 83, 84, in order to accept that position as the director of a seminary in Latin America.
So how did that lead, though, to the antiquities?
You know, I really started off my whole career right out of high school. I really wanted to teach about Bible. I went to Israel right out of high school, become a professor, a teacher of middle school of Bible. A few things got in the way, but one day the head of the school came to me and they said, you know, Richard, you are a wonderful person, but you should go on for a PhD. You shouldn't be teaching just Bible for kids. And that encounter brought me on a long journey of doing a master's, doing a PhD.
In archaeology?
In actually history. I wrote on the first 4 centuries of the encounter between Judaism and Christianity and the evidence that we have. Most of it's literary, but a lot of it was archaeological.
So you didn't go to be an archaeologist.
No.
What you went was to study Bible.
And
Bible
led me to history, and history led me to the field of archaeology. And I'm now a registered professional archaeologist. You know, I've been doing archaeological projects for 30 years.
So most people, if you're living in Connecticut or
Right.
America, have never met an archaeologist.
Right.
What do you do?
At the university, I teach courses in archaeology. So I teach ancient Near Eastern archaeology in the Bible. I also teach world archaeology at the university. And what this is a way to see the world through material culture as opposed to just literary culture. The bottles that we drink from, the tables that we use, the eyeglasses, the jewelry.
This material culture sheds light on what happened?
What happened in the past. It's usually one of the only ways that we can compare what we have as usually a literary history that was created by people for a variety of reasons, for their own purposes, something to compare it to.
And why? Why is it important?
It's important because part of that preserves who we are as a people. We are not just canonized texts of literary culture. We are people who live our lives often in many different ways, and the preservation of who we are as a people depends upon the material culture in addition to the literary culture.
So I'm looking at your body of work, and it's vast. You've written 9 books.
Right.
You've done 7 digs in Israel. You've done 2 in Spain. You've done 1 in Sobibor in Poland.
Yeah.
So
and I'm working in Greece now.
Oh, in Greece
Yeah.
also. I mean, the most obvious one is Atlantis.
Yeah.
There's so much conflict.
Right.
You say X, the other one says Y.
Yeah.
So how do you align this?
The good thing about science is you have to stake out with a good hypothesis what you're doing. Many of the things that I'm working on, I got invited to. Like, for example, I never went out looking for Atlantis. Just came to the University of Hartford. There were Spanish archaeologists that were working in a marsh in southern Spain. And we at the University of Hartford have developed a technique for identifying and mapping the subsurface of any location on Earth. We do ground-penetrating radar, which is a device that looks underneath the surface down to about 15 feet. GPR was being used by geologists.
So given that you pioneered that, are other archaeologists using that now too?
Well, you know, we pioneered 2 different techniques together. That's what we made unique. Ground-penetrating radar was being used by archaeologists. I wasn't the first person to come up with this idea. Second technique is called electrical resistivity tomography, and that's used by gas and oil exploration to look down below 15 feet. So we can look now down to the very foundation of any city, any major city on Earth, down to 30, 40, 50 feet below the surface.
Without disturbing
Without
the top.
disturbing anything. You know, for those of you who don't know, archaeology is the most destructive science on Earth.
Well, sure, I'm accustomed to seeing archaeology as just a bunch of rubble.
Right. But
that's what I see.
No, but they're destructive themselves. When you go out in the field and you try to find something, you're destroying the evidence. As you're trying to reconstruct the evidence, you're destroying it. So I said, wouldn't it be great if we could map the subsurface of any archaeological location before we start to destroy it? Discover where there are things buried, and only excavate those things where we know there's something to excavate.
So you didn't have a geology background.
No, I didn't have a geology
background. You didn't have a
background.
scientific background.
Right.
How did you come to this conclusion? How does a boy from Nebraska?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the concept of doing this electromagnetic tomography? Where did it come to you?
Well, the idea is very simple. I had good colleagues, and we had problems we were trying to solve. One of the first problems I was trying to solve is I was looking at a fishing village on the northeast shore of the Sea of Galilee. It was a fishing village, but it was 2 miles from the water. So I went to a geologist I was at the University of Nebraska at the time, and I said to him, you know, we need to figure out, this looks like a geological problem, not an archaeological problem. And they said, oh yeah, I could help you solve this. And he started to introduce me to other colleagues in the departments of geography and geology who brought their equipment out to the site. And for the first time, we were mapping this area 2 miles up until this fishing village that was located up on top of a hill. And we figured out for the first time that the Sea of Galilee, that everybody thought was this very stable body of water, was actually very unstable. It was located on a tectonic plate on the Earth's surface where earthquakes were constantly changing the water levels and sedimentation.
So is now that technique, is that a technique that is accepted by all, or I notice you're breathing heavy.
Breathe heavy because the good news is that everybody would love for us to do it. I've done 28 projects in the past 20 years. I give it away. Because when I go to a site, most universities, most archaeological institutes cannot afford the kinds of equipment that electrical resistivity tomography being done by gas and oil exploration, you know, $500,000 worth of equipment that needs constant.
So are other archaeologists, how are they doing it?
How are they doing it?
They're inviting you.
They're inviting us.
Ergo, Atlantis
Atlantis
came to
came
you.
about.
And all the research that you've been doing and all the digs in Bethsaida and Qumran, Cave of Letters, not everybody agrees with the findings, and that's the most obvious with Atlantis.
That's the beauty
So
of this.
how, as a scientist, as an archaeologist, as a rabbi, how do you deal with that? Like, isn't there a right answer?
You know, you stay in science. This is science now. And by the way, what we do is science. And archaeology is a science.
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
You stake out a hypothesis. You collect evidence. And wherever the evidence takes you, that's what it is. And if somebody comes up with more evidence for a better location for any of these sites that we've excavated, fine. They can, and you know what? I read their report and I say, you know what? They're right.
So in the case of Atlantis, which is the most, well, it's not the most recent,
No,
but
it's not the most recent.
it's pretty revolutionary in its findings.
Right.
There are people who are saying that they're claiming that it wasn't Atlantis.
You know what? When they have more evidence than me, I'll read what they have. Right now, we have collected the largest amount of evidence. And it's not only evidence that's material culture. Back in the time of Plato, there was this writing called the Timaeus, where he identifies exactly where it was located. Plato says that it was located by the Pillars of Hercules, which everyone, even those people who are naysayers, agrees that the Pillars of Hercules were located at the Straits of Gibraltar. Atlantis should be somewhere around here. But where? This made National Geographic sit up and take notice, because there were archaeologists that had been working in that same marsh for 5 years and hadn't developed a theory as to where to look. We were using space photography, we were using electrical resistivity tomography, we were identifying not only land archaeology but also sea archaeology. And I have to tell you, this is between you and me and all the National Geographic is looking at doing an Atlantis too, because we have other evidence, which we weren't able to present in 56 minutes on this 1 hour program.
You've done how many digs now?
Well, we've actually have done 30. I just came back from Rhodes, the island of Rhodes, and we just did 4 different separate locations in Rhodes. Rather important, 3 synagogues and a site called, little site built by the Templars by the Grand Master Palace. Turns out that an archaeologist has identified where the base of the famous Colossus of Rhodes is still located. And what we're seeing is it to find it, even though it's located right underneath a very culturally important place.
So that's the most recent, but I want to talk about something that most people know about is Sobibor.
Sobibor.
You did Sobibor also. Why did you do Sobibor? Why didn't you do Birkenau, Auschwitz, which is obviously a place where everybody goes, it's open to the public, it has millions of visitors. Sobibor has nothing.
Yeah, and that was the real reason. It was located in the midst of a forest in eastern Poland, and it was the only extermination camp built by the Nazis, and there was a rebellion there on October 17th, 1943. All the inmates got out, and the Nazis were so embarrassed by it. In the middle of the war, they brought in heavy equipment and covered the entire location with dirt and planted trees, thinking that it would be hidden. What they did was they preserved it for all time.
But what could you possibly find?
Everything. The entire, see, unfortunately, most of us don't know that after the war, when all those extermination camps were located, they had to destroy most of the evidence because there was typhus, there was sickness, the buildings were falling down, and so we, the Allies, we got together and we basically, and they were reconstructed from maps and from drawings and photographs, but this was all in situ in its original location from 1943, and it preserves all of the original materials.
So what did you find in Sobibor?
So I have to say that we mapped the entire subsurface, but archaeologists have been following this for the past few years. The gas chambers in its original location were found. All of the camp installations were all found intact. And all of the people that were buried, 250,000 people, were killed at Sobibor. They didn't have to be touched. Why? Because our subsurface mapping tells us exactly where there's people.
And so you didn't touch the people because it goes against...
Against not only Jewish law, but it goes against all of the things that archaeology is about. Today, we don't touch Native American burials unless there's an absolute crisis that is necessary to move them. We recognize that the sanctity of burial is very important.
But so the hypotheses for something like Sobibor...
is exactly the same as Atlantis. And that is what makes what we do. So, for example, somebody came to me and said, there's a location in Vilna that we would like to look at. Can you bring your equipment to identify the Gaon of Vilna's original location? It was destroyed in World War II. And so that's a project we're looking at. But any time period, any site, and if it's destroyed, that's okay.
That's good.
That's okay, because what it means is...
Well, that's better.
Well, sometimes...
You're telling me it's better.
Sometimes it's better, because, like, for example, most of the sites that today we associate with pilgrimage have been built on in the medieval period and the pre-modern period. And it's very hard for me to rip up a 1,000-year-old church or a 1,000-year-old mosque or a 1,000-year-old synagogue in order to look at what's located below that surface. And that is what makes what we do so unique.
I mean, I can see you're very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I can see you're having a great time.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
the expression Indiana Jones seems very, very appropriate. But why do you do this?
I got to tell you, what I do is something that I only take projects. By the way, I'm offered lots of projects every year. And I look at them and I try to assess whether I can really contribute anything to what's already known. If I think I can and I can raise the money, because I have to tell you something, we are not paid for by National Geographic or NOVA. We have to raise our own funds in order to keep our own academic, ethical independence.
Is that part of the business of an archaeologist?
That it shouldn't be, but it is.
But it is.
It is, because we have to either get national grants, and then sometimes when I get national grants from a national body, that national body has, shall I say, we have expectations you're going to find stuff.
Okay.
And I have no expectations. I know I can go to a place, and then I will say, we will give them a map, and we will say, here, 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 and here has to be excavated. There's something massive located about 2 meters, about 6 feet below the surface. So that means that I can tell archaeologists, instead of destroying an entire site until you find something, excavate only that tiny corner. And right there is where you're going to find what you're looking for.
Well, with that, I'm going to say it seems like you're still having a good time.
I am having a good time.
It seems like you have the
And the
job.
students
You're
are-
doing
and
what
the students-
everybody wanted to do when they were
And the
young.
students are having a great time. Because I have to say, what's very unique about this is I take students, and by the way, I take volunteers.
Yes, I know. I'm reading.
I'm
University
looking
of Hartford has a huge amount.
I'm looking for a few good
Well,
volunteers.
perhaps I might be one of them. We've been talking to Richard Freund, and as you can see, Dr. Freund is still going really, really strong. He's got a lot of projects, and thank you, Dr. Freund.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.